What's going on? You're rocking with another episode of Danny Do Sports, the best basketball YouTuber in the game. And after a season in which he averaged a career high in points, significantly took more threes, and even came to 7 assists per game, I think De'Aaron Fox happens to be the most underrated player in the game. One of the things we always talk about in the NBA space is how ESPN rank is constantly messing things up. And an interesting quirk of this year's rankings, De'Aaron Fox was ranked 34th. When you look at ESPN rank, they had him ranked 34th last year. I think there's 3 major reasons why he slept on, but then I'm going to give you guys some more reasons to really watch him play this season, as well as turn your league pass on, make sure you're seeing him game in and game out, destroy some of the best competition in the league, all while supporting his claim to potentially be an all-star this season. Let's get it. Now, the first reason he obviously is underrated is he plays in one of the league's worst markets. Sacramento is constantly going to be overshadowed by the 2 LA teams and the more successful Northern California team, the Golden State Warriors. When you think about that, as well as the fact that this team has been perpetually rebuilding, even since before they lost to Marcus Cousins, they've been on one of the longest playoff droughts in the NBA. De'Aaron Fox is on a bad team in a small market that's not going to help really your brand. You don't really see De'Aaron in a lot of commercials right now, and while he's still young considerably and there's room for him to grow, unlike a player who you might idol in a small market like a Damian Lillard, the playoff success did not come early, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that he hasn't had star centerpieces around him to really build. Now, the second reason De'Aaron Fox is going to be slept on, honestly, the point guard position is the deepest position in the NBA. When you think about the fact that trying to be an all-star or all-NBA player, you have to beat out so many other players at your position, it's going to be hard to solidify yourself as a young guy when, heck, Chris Paul was still playing at an elite level for the Phoenix Suns last season, and he's like 10 years older than De'Aaron Fox. When you also have to consider that you have Steph Curry in your division, and then when you factor in the fact that guys on the other side of the water like Harden, Irving, guys like Damian Lillard, all these guys in the NBA are elite players who have been playing for a fairly long time. Breaking into that level and into that conversation usually does require some semblance of playoff success, which we previously talked about the Kings don't have. But just putting up the numbers, this is also an era where player statistics are more inflated than ever. I mean, last year, Trae Young averaged 25 points and 9 assists heading into the All-Star break and still could not be an All-Star because everybody looked at his statistics as inflated and it wasn't helping his team win. In the same way, people might be looking at De'Aaron Fox that way, but that doesn't take the fact that in isolation, when you put him on another team, he may similarly be effective. Now, the third reason, beyond all that, we've seen other players in smaller markets really be outsized relative to the market. Guys like Giannis, guys like Zion. The thing about these players is they are extraordinary athletes. Now, De'Aaron is an extraordinary athlete in his own right. He might be the fastest player in the NBA for years to come, but he's one of the slighter frame players in the NBA, which limits the number of things he can do that's very exciting on the court. Zion, for example, can run the floor with all this immense size and strength, bully guys for rebounds, dunk on anybody. Giannis can do something where he can go a few dribbles and be anywhere on the court. Defensively, he's the longest, most active apex predator to ever play the game, in my opinion. He can change any possession at any time if you run a set by him. But De'Aaron Fox, on the other hand, because he's such a slight player, one of probably the smaller players in the NBA, he looks to be only 6'1", 6'2", and he looks to be at any given time 210 or less. His explosiveness really is a horizontal and not a vertical thing. And then in addition, he doesn't have that imposing frame like a LeBron when he was in Cleveland that made people really fantasize about what he could be when he starts winning championships. People will really be astute and see De'Aaron Fox as limited in his role and maybe say he cannot be the best player in a championship team because of his size. But now it's time to get into why you should be watching De'Aaron Fox and why I think personally, not only is he the most slept on player, but next year, he will outperform his NBA rank rating. So the first thing I want to note about De'Aaron Fox is he's obviously a player that has improved year after year. Just look at his statistics. He's pretty durable as well. And averaging that 25 and 7 last year, if he continues to rise, he might be a player that might average 27 and 8 next year, something very exciting, especially as this team looks to work the ball into his hands more. And he's taking more three-point shots. He's making them at a .300 rate almost. And we've seen high-volume three-point shooters that weren't really effective, like Luka Doncic, who have the ball in his hands, be really exciting, but also polarizing for what they do. He would just need to lead his team to the playoffs to really be considered an elite player. When you watch him like that, like, it's very exciting. But then let's talk about what he does on the court and in the half court beyond transition. That's so beautiful. So earlier this year, I posted a video on my channel that was just a short 1-minute clip. I was watching League Pass and the Kings was playing the Clippers, and getting into the fourth quarter, De'Aaron Fox was taking over. And so for some reason, the Clippers decided to move Pete Bev off of him and put Kawhi Leonard, who is bigger, maybe a little slower footed, but to slap him down in transition. De'Aaron Fox subsequently gave him that work and went on a mini run. And Kawhi Leonard's supposed to be one of, if not the better defenders in the NBA. And why I say this is De'Aaron Fox in the half court leverages his speed in an incredible way. Very tight handle, but very quick first step. And he gets that move in, and then once he sees you bit one way, he's by you. And what's impressive about that is he can do that now, not just in the pick and roll like in earlier years, but in isolation, he can be a bucket getter. And when I say that, it's really about getting downhill. So he can shimmy on you and take the jump shot. And I know coaches don't really want to see that for someone who's shooting the way he does, but that will start to increase. And as he gets to become a better shooter off the dribble, that will also take off. But he can find a way to get 2 feet in the paint on almost anybody in isolation by getting by them. And then it's just pass, and his team has to spray and make their shots. He would drive, get fouled. He's a decent free throw shooter, and he's not afraid of the contact despite being so small. And he really looks to, embarrass defenders when he's on an island. I would say that, in my opinion, he's one of the better isolation players in the game at his age. And it's not like because of the craftiness or something like that, but purely off his athleticism and talent. He's going to make a lot of highlight plays. In fact, I would put him up there with guys like Trae Young, guys like Luka, in terms of what they can do in isolation for players drafted around the time he was. I'd even say he's on that level of a Jason Tatum and a Donovan Mitchell, but nobody's talking about it that much. The last reason is he's been disrespected, and we need to support these small markets, even if it's just on League Pass. Some of the guys ranked higher than him, which was puzzling, was Ja Morant, Ben Simmons, CJ McCollum. Guys who, McCollum is good for all he could do, but I would prefer De'Aaron Fox. Simmons obviously had an atrocious playoff series, and the only reason I can think of why Ja Morant was ranked higher than him was because Ja Morant led his team to the playoffs last year. But when you consider Ja Morant's really only an 18 points and 7 assists per game guy, and further, he doesn't have nearly the shooting credibility that a De'Aaron Fox has, especially from all areas of the floor outside of the paint. Ja Morant is very athletic, but De'Aaron Fox is very athletic too. We need to elevate what we consider De'Aaron Fox to be. Personally, I expect him to go into this year and be one of the top 5 point guards in the NBA. But more controversial, I think he's better than Kyrie. He's more durable, for example. When he's on the court, he's not going to be limited in his role, and he could definitely score buckets and spades. And he's a better passer than Kyrie at this point of Kyrie's career, in my personal opinion. If we can stop the disrespect and we can look at the NBA as every market in the NBA has somebody worth watching, at least just on League Pass. I mean, even Detroit has Cade, Houston has Kevin Porter Jr., and they have Jalen Green. When you consider all that, why aren't people tuning into the Kings? But when you think about the fact that De'Aaron Fox is overcoming all this to not only put up the numbers he does, but work as hard as he does. I mean, his personal trainer is his wife, guys. Like, he does not leave the game. He is taking this Kobe mentality and marrying himself into it and taking it home. Like, he spends crazy amounts of hours working on his craft. Like, we gotta support the young brother, because on the flip side, if he leaves Sacramento and say go to Miami or something, y'all gonna be late. Y'all gonna be sleeping on. I'm gonna be like, oh nah, dude was ready to play with Bam from the jump. I mean, they played in Kentucky, and not only that, dude been balling for years. No All-Star appearances, no All-NBA appearances because his team sucked, but he is phenomenal. On the flip side, I want y'all to know already going into this year, if he stay healthy and average the numbers he put up last year, he gonna be getting my vote to be an NBA All-Star this year. Holla at your boy. It's been another episode of Danny Do Sports, and let me know what you guys think. Can you name a more underrated player than my guy De'Aaron Fox?